right, Talk community, welcome back. Welcome back. It has been a long stint of these talk sessions and really just being able to dive into minority mental health and have these very candid conversations with a number of different professionals and talk partners that have been a part of the conversation. And I am so happy to be able to welcome a new face to the talk community and be able to have the ongoing discussion about minority mental health and how that impacts us and in the Black and Brown community and as consumers of resources that we find in Black and Brown communities. So I'm going to hand it over to her. She's going to introduce herself and we will dive right into the conversation for today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I find this to be my privilege and honor to at any time talk about minority mental health. It's so important. So my name is Dr. Christine Beliard. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm the owner and director of Sugarland Wellness Center. And I also am a professor. So I train therapists. And my hope is that in this conversation, there's something that we talk about or that's said that can really spur someone to say, hold on, this is a resource. And I want to make sure that I'm even being mindful of how these resources are really here for us to help heal.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. And throughout this series, we've talked a great deal of minority mental health from the man's perspective, from the woman's perspective in regards to spirituality. And we have additional conversations about wellness and about finances. And all of these things really, 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 truly impact our mental health. And as a healthcare professional, so very often we are being mindful in our assessment and our treatment of the social determinants of health. Now, to some, that may not be a conversation that they're having around the dinner table. So to start this conversation off, I really think it's important that we discuss the social determinants of health and how those social determinants of health impact Black and Brown communities as it relates to our mental health.
Oh, I so agree. So when we think about social determinants, we have to really think about, even for our personal lives, what were we born into? What is our normal? And if we start there, sometimes we're able to recognize that there has been transmissions throughout generations that are impacted by things like systemic racism, even in our neighborhood, the types of foods that we have access to. It can always also be, what did we do when something went wrong in our families, right? So even just noticing what are the common patterns that impact our communities, because sometimes we can see it as, okay, why am I feeling this way? Like, let's say someone's having depressive symptomology. We could take it as something negative, like, well, I should be strong enough to deal with this. Well, no, it most likely is not a you problem. There are larger forces that are really impacting what impacts us. Then we're talking about these social determinants where it's not so much just these determinants are, but also what we can do in the face of them.
Yes, I love that. And being able to truly acknowledge the environment that we live in and how so many things around us impact our day-to-day life.
That's
The food
true.
that we eat, our community, our income. Just and as you mentioned, like understanding those patterns, which we are aware of, but oftentimes minimize.
Yeah.
That is like the key that I feel that is so often overlooked in Black and Brown communities where it becomes a norm. And that pattern is not always a healthy pattern. And it's
That's
definitely
true.
to break. And that is why we talk so heavily about minority mental health across generations at all age levels, because what impacted my mom and my grandmother is definitely oftentimes passed down.
Oh, for sure.
And what generally happens is we kind of dismiss those things because it's like, well, it was okay for mom and grandma. It has to be okay for me. And this is just the way life is. And so tapping into those patterns and doing something about it, you know?
Oh, yes. And I love that you brought that up, because sometimes we can almost see it as us dishonoring our culture by choosing something different, even something like how we discipline our kids that has such an impact on esteem and mental health or what have you, as an example. But I think what is the privilege is that we really are amongst the first generation that has the tools, the resources, for some, the income to be able to actually, like you were mentioning, break some of these patterns. And I think it's a privilege. So I know even in my own practice, I have, I mean, about 90, I would say 95% of my clients are Black and Brown. And it's amazing because when that door closes, and we really are in a trustworthy space, certain things like you're saying that we took for, this is just normal. It's like, okay, now that I'm able to see the pattern or what, impacted my lived experience as a kid, or even me with my boss at work or what have you, that we really are able to, one, dispel certain myths, that there's really nothing wrong with us. We really are trying to survive some messed up systems, that to me, I think it's just so powerful that we get to be the generation that does break quite a few of these patterns.
I love it. And I love that you acknowledge it as a privilege, because that is something that not everyone has, or that
That's true.
everyone is fortunate enough to have. And
That's
we as professionals play such a large role in that,
true.
in making sure that the resources are accessible, that
Yeah.
they're knowledgeable, that they become tangible to our communities. So a
Yeah.
question that I have for you when it comes to that is, what role would you say as mental health professionals do we share in mitigating the mistrust in the Black and Brown community as it relates to minority mental health?
Oh, that when I say that is such a good question, because I don't think we talk about it so much. Because if you think about it, us as minority mental health providers, we are almost like we're so sought out. Like people are looking for someone that looks like them as a way to hopefully find an entry point into healing. So I do think one, it's important that us as providers, that I hate to say it, and I know that most providers know this that are minority, is that in our training, most of the training is not centered on our communities. So I hate to have to break it down to those who may be entering the field, but you will have to do extra work. You know what I mean? So really think about how the theories you learn can really be applied to our communities, because there are some differences and things that aren't considered. That's one. But then two, I think being able to be yourself, to me, that is the biggest part of it. Because it's one thing if someone's already nervous to start therapy and then they get with you and then, you're talking a certain, not that you can't talk however you talk, but where like you feel like you have to represent the system. You know what I mean? Where like you can't just talk in a way that really allows people and invites people to feel safe and feel comfortable. So I do think us also bringing our services to where the community is. So I know for years I was a director of a faith-based program, because a lot of the literature talks about how many of us, we find solace in a church setting, if it's a local barbershop, hairstylist, being able to connect in ways where I am where you are. I'm a part of the community. I think that's a big piece. And then two, being willing to go where our clients want to go in therapy or in the services that we're providing. So really co-constructing the experience with our clients. So it's not as if you need to acquiesce to therapy and come in here a certain way, but no, what do you need in this experience to heal and to grow? So I have found that that is so helpful and useful, not just as a mental health provider, but as a client. When I have went to a therapist, I was looking for the same things. And to me, there's no other feeling when you're able to kind of take the air out of the pillow, breathe, and just feel like, no, we can really get down to the business of, growth.
Yes, I love that. We discussed during our last mental health symposium the importance of language
Yes.
and the approach and how you present, and how one seeks out therapy and the
Yes.
therapeutic intervention, because that's the only way that is going to be received if you approach
Yes.
the right language. And I love you sharing being able to co-create with the client. That's something that we learned early on in social work, like meeting the client
Yeah.
where they are.
Yeah.
And with the right language, you break down those barriers. You easily build rapport. You make it
Yeah.
a safe place to have these conversations.
Yeah.
Because if we're not creating these safe places, then we're continuing to build and add to these negative
It's
patterns that we see.
true. It's so true. Yes, I agree. I agree. And I just want to add, just be important to remember what drew us to this work and how do we want to show up for our clients? Because I agree, just ensure that we're a part of the solution and
Yeah.
not furthering the problem.
Mm,
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Making sure that you're part of the solution and not
Yes.
furthering the problem. I love that. So you kind of touched on this in your response to the first question. So I'm definitely gonna go there.
Yes. Yes.
And in Black and brown communities, we hear so very often this word strong. And the perception over time has changed. I will say that my definition of strong today is not my definition of strong in my 20s. And with the language that we just spoke about, I feel it's so important that we move past the perception of strong
Right.
and really take into consideration and refine that. So, my question for you is, considering the perception of strong in Black and brown communities, how do we refine that
Mhm.
term, that word, that S word, strong, as it
Right.
relates to our own mental health?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Because one thing, this applies to men and women.
Mhm.
To be a strong woman, to be a strong man. And there's this assumption on our jobs, in our
Mhm.
home, in our community. The first thing that's important is to recognize that this really is a residual effect of slavery, that we
Mm,
didn't have a choice but to be strong.
yeah.
Nobody cared about our feelings or if this was too much. We were forced
Mhm.
into doing things that were horrific and that were too much for any human being.
Mm,
So, one thing that I think is important is for us to really challenge it. Oftentimes, and again, let's be real, we can handle a lot,
yeah.
but it's because we've had to. So
Mm,
I think it's actually important that we dispel this notion that it's the stronger you are, the better. No.
mm,
To me, I actually love how this newer generation is really like embracing this soft life. I
yes.
love it, right? Because we deserve to have a life where we can enjoy our lives, our families, our communities. I would even say what we decide to do for work.
Mm,
So, in my opinion, I think that the challenge to strong is the embracing of joy. Because I
mm,
think us as minority communities, the more that we're able to center our joy,
yeah.
the more that we can kind of take down those defenses. Where, because again, if you're having to be strong, that means you're in a defense mode. And we've
Yep.
had to be trying to survive. But
Mm,
I am just, my hope, especially through resources and what we have these days, that we really are able not just to survive, but to thrive and
yeah.
enjoy our lives. We deserve
Yes.
that. Yes.
That is the conversation that is ongoing of how you transition from surviving to thriving. And what I'm learning is only you can define and refine that.
I agree.
And it will evolve over time. It may look
Yeah.
different at 8 a.m. versus at 12 noon.
Right.
It's definitely going to look different in the various seasons of life.
Yes. Yes.
And it's important that we prioritize our own, as you mentioned, Black joy and what that
Yes.
means to us, and have no guilt in making sure that that's put on
That's
the
so
forefront.
good.
Because so often I feel that we feel guilty for
Yes.
prioritizing our own mental health, for prioritizing our Black joy,
Yes.
even saying that out loud
Right.
is sometimes a challenge, and
That's
especially in
true.
different places and spaces where it not be accepted. So I completely resonate with that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that is definitely my intent and hope with
Hmm.
the series, but also with this platform, to continue
Yes.
to have these conversations, to bring the awareness, to bring the insight, so it can be like, you know what, it's okay.
It's okay. It's
It's okay.
okay.
It's
Yes. And I
okay.
just have to say this. I think not only is it okay, it is our right. Like our ancestors literally paid for us to have the right.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
So I hear you as far as dispelling any guilt around it. And another thing with this whole idea of being strong, that also can create isolation. And that's why I
Mm.
think a lot of clients end up coming to us because if I'm supposed to be strong, I'm not letting people in that I'm barely hanging on. And so
Mm,
if we're not vulnerable, then we can't connect in a real way. Now we know how to connect, of course, but connect where it really may matter. Like,
yes.
hey, I'm going through a lot right now. I need some assistance right here. That means nothing about you as a person. If anything, that means that to me, that's real strength to be
Yes.
vulnerable. Yes.
Hmm. Yeah. I was just gonna say that being able to identify the strength in vulnerability.
Yes, I love that. I didn't say it like that. I like how you.
This
Yes.
has been an awesome discussion, and I truly, truly, truly appreciate you taking time out to be a part of this talk series and bringing your experience, your insight to our community. And as we continue to have these conversations, I want to make sure that they know how to connect to you and be able
Oh,
to
yeah.
reach out as warranted. So if you would please share your Instagram, your link, your LinkedIn,
Yes.
however they can find you so we can remain connected.
Oh, yes. Well, I just have to say thank you, thank you, thank you for having me. This is just amazing. One, your commitment to our community and your platform is nothing short of amazing. So I know you're going to touch so many people. I know you already have, but I just have to say, just thank you for all that you're doing. So those who want to connect with me, please do. So you can reach me. My website is www.sugarlandwellnesscenter.com. You can email me at Dr. Christine at sugarlandwellnesscenter.com. Instagram at Dr. Christine underscore MFT. Those are the
Mm.
best ways to reach me. And I do look forward to connecting.
Yes, yes, definitely. Well, see, you guys, you have it. Like, we are having these conversations, and the goal with this talk series is to be able to continue the conversation. So definitely use us as a conversation starter. Have us around the kitchen table at the next brunch, at the next spa
I
day, to
love
be able to
that.
check in with each other and be able to really cultivate and foster those relationships that really matter, and that will be able to take your wellness and your mental health to the next level. We're going to continue this conversation on next week, and in doing so, I encourage you guys to always remember to embrace the matters of minority minds and to keep talking. Thank you so very much for being a part.